Hello, everybody, and welcome to We Are Texans Wednesday, number 5. As you're noticing, I am the only one on the screen today, and yes, that means I'm by myself. But rest assured, we're still going to be covering all Texans, all podcast long. I, of course, am Curtis, the Curtis from the Curtis Podcast Network, the host of all of our weekly shows and this AFC South show. So if you are a Titans, Texans, Jags, or Colts fan, we have a show for you. And if you like hearing a roundtable discussion about the AFC South as a whole, check out this AFC South show. We'll be having one of those come up probably either the end of this month or the beginning of next month, but it's something to look out for. Yeah, hit the like and subscribe button. We're trying to hit 1,000 1,000 likes would be nice, but 1,000 subscribers, and we're on the way. At 326 right now. We're basically at 990% increase since the beginning of the football season last year. So let's keep that upward momentum going. So please, 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 please hit the like and subscribe button, folks. So let's get into it. A lot of people are talking about what Houston is going to do with the number 2 overall pick. And rightfully so. There's a lot of speculation about which quarterback it's going to be. And I'm sure that a lot of you are saying it's got to be, whomever is left after Carolina makes their selection. And you're right. That's probably, 90% of, everybody out there is saying that's exactly what's going to happen. And I can't sit here and deny any of that. That's got a lot of weight to it. It's got a lot of gravity. So I'd be an idiot to say that that's not going to happen. But it's just not what I think needs to happen. Yes, would it suck if Bryce Young turns out to be the second coming of, like a Peyton, but packaged much, much smaller? Bryce Young is going to be an interesting case study for this because he's so small. There's a few injuries that could happen to him that would absolutely just derail his career, and there's nothing that we could do about it. And he got injured behind an SEC offensive line, which has at least one player going into the draft, that being, no, that's the Georgia tackle, I think. But these guys are huge, and he still managed to get hurt. As we all know, Houston's offensive line of late has not been very good. They've done a lot to shore that up with the additions of Shaq Mason, and they're going to be probably drafting a center. But you still got a young Kenyon Green who we hope is going to be taking a step forward. So it's an improved offensive line, but is it enough to really make sure that Bryce Young has what it takes to get to the finish line at the end of the season, at least in year 1 or the early stages of his career? I will say that no matter who the quarterback is, the system that we're running, it's a knockoff of a knockoff of a knockoff of the Mike Shanahan system, which Kyle Shanahan runs in San Francisco, and now Bobby Slowick will be using in Houston with DeMeco Ryans. I'm not knocking that at all. It's just what it is. I mean, Mike Shanahan started it back in the 90s. Obviously, Kyle's dad, and Kyle learned from him in Washington. And Kyle was at one point in Houston under Gary Kubiak, who also learned under Mike Shanahan with the Broncos in the 90s when he was a backup quarterback to John Elway, Gary Kubiak. So this system has been here before. It has worked well. And we were able to make Matt Schaub a Pro Bowl NFL yards leading quarterback, and nobody thought Matt Schaub was going to be any sort of that. So to me, that tells me that we have some leeway options when it comes to QB taken in this particular draft. If I had to put money on if the Texans didn't draft Bryce Young and CJ Stroud was already gone, it would be Hendon Hooker would be the next quarterback on the board for me. Anthony Richardson, while athletic as hell, has an arm and the athletic upside enough is enough to quantify him as maybe a late first, early second. But I feel like AR-15 brings a lot of inconsistency. While he is very good from time to time at reading the middle of the field and making those on-time throws, there's a lot more times where he puts himself in pressure. He puts himself and his team in the Dutch because he's trying to roll out when there's no reason to roll out, and now people are chasing him. And this happens a lot throughout all of his tape. He's also got one season of football. Will Levis had a pretty solid year the year before, when Wandale was still there. Now this season, he had basically no one on his team. His offensive line was in shambles. His best player beside himself was the running back Rodriguez. And a lot of his passes, a lot of his games that are marred by poor stat lines exist because he's got to force the ball because no one is getting open. Which brings me to Hendon Hooker, who in 2 years of starting at Tennessee had a, what was it? 20-7 record, I think. Only threw 5 interceptions in 2 years. He threw 2 interceptions all of last season before he tore his ACL. And that's one hell of a job. One of those interceptions being against Alabama, a game they won. And he was being hit, and the ball was underthrown because of that. And another interception he threw against Georgia in a game that was, it just, from the opening gun, it was just the dogs. So I think Hendon Hooker brings you the athletic upside you like. He did tear his ACL in like November or something, but he's actually supposedly ahead of schedule and would be available as soon as training camp opens its doors. Allegedly. Now, I get it. He's older. You're worried about, well, what if, 3 or 4 years from now, he's not the greatest. I'm not saying we draft this man number 2. I'm saying we draft as much talent as humanly possible in the first, maybe even second round, and you draft Hendon Hooker when you can. Probably late first, early second. And that saves you even more money on a quarterback. But I think he's going to be, over time, the best QB out of this class. He doesn't need to sit back and learn. While Tennessee's offense was definitely not a pro-style offense, and he'll have to get used to going under center more, actually a lot more, there's going to be very few quarterbacks in this class who can make the throws like Hendon Hooker can. And the leadership that Hendon Hooker brings, the charisma, the energy. This was a man who was invited to the Senior Bowl, and he was hurt. That doesn't happen. They don't invite you to the Senior Bowl if you're hurt. And then all he did at the Senior Bowl was impress people. Just my 2 cents. I'd like to see us go Will Anderson at 2. And then at 12, pick maybe a corner. Devon Washington would be a good idea. Or trade back a little bit. Pick up some more picks later and maybe get a wide receiver later in the round. Maybe at like 18 or 19. And depending on what we pick up, we might be able to get another second or third round pick, package it up, trade up to get Hendon Hooker. And then we're golden. We just need a center, and that can be arranged. There's 2 or 3 really good ones, and I don't think they're supposed to go about the second round. So I think it's going to be a pretty fortuitous draft, really, no matter which way we go. And of course, I understand that all of this is just my opinion, and I understand that it's not going to happen like that. They're going to draft Bryce Young. They're going to draft someone else at 12 or trade back a little bit for more picks. I know that's how it's going to happen. But let me dream, damn it. Second, free agency. I would argue this free agency has been the biggest free agency for the Houston Texans organization in the last 3 or 4 years minimum. Bringing in Shaq Mason, as I mentioned before, bringing in some edge depth in Chase Winovich and some more D-line talent in Sheldon Rankins and Hassan Ridgeway. We've brought in Denzel Perryman, who's a phenomenal run stopper, a little bit of a liability in the passing game. Corey Littleton, a linebacker. We brought in Jimmy Ward at safety. Robert Woods, Bobby Trees, a.k.a. the wide receiver. He'll be the de facto wide receiver one unless we draft somebody amazing. And we brought in Dalton Schultz, which is absolutely huge. Just by simply, like, the first game, just by simply strapping up his helmet, he's going to be in the top 5 of Texans tight ends to ever lace up a pair of shoes. I mean, just based on past production. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying he's, the second coming of Tony Gonzalez or anything, but I think he has Owen Daniels type ceiling. And with that, I think we've done pretty well. But with the Brandon Cooks deal, we're looking at a plus $30 million in cap space. Now, a lot of fans out there are saying, hey, we got the cap space. Let's just trade the 2 first-round draft picks for Lamar, and we're golden. We got Lamar. No. Lamar, while a freak athlete, while he can make 90% of the throws, he doesn't necessarily make it to the finish line each season. And that's why he's being, I don't want to say overlooked, but not necessarily looked at as a franchise quarterback when it comes to people trying to pay this man. People are not trying to pay $45+ million a year for a man who's only going to play 9 games. So that's something that's going to have to immediately change for any team to consider that. But as it stands, they could make some moves. There's some older veterans who would be solid mentors on this team. And I think that we have the cap capability of bringing in or trading for some of these bigger name guys and making even bigger of a splash this offseason. Now, I kind of mentioned it already, but the draft. Obviously, outside of quarterback, we have needs at wide receiver, edge, linebacker, corner. We could use a body in basically every room except for maybe the tight end room. Maybe. It is a 1-year deal for Dalton Schultz, so you could actually say that they would be interested in drafting another tight end. The last 2-3 drafts, they've drafted at least one. I imagine that streak continues. So Jackson Smith and Jigba would be probably the wide receiver 1 here. His route running is crisp. His hands are good. He's got decent size. And he comes from wide receiver university, OSU. Now, Texans fans might be a little worried. Well, hey, we had Braxton Miller for a minute, and he didn't really do much. Yeah. Braxton Miller was a project. This guy's a little different. He's built a little different. So I think that there is some... I'm not super high on Quentin Johnson. There's some other receivers in this class. Obviously, I'm a Tennessee fan, so I'm going to bring up Jalen Hyatt and Cedric Tillman. Hyatt, obviously, with the top end speed, but he worries me with his hands. A lot of his touchdowns last year, he bobbled them for a good 5 yards before he secured the catch, even if he was wide ass open. And for years, those were things that he would drop. So maybe he got it fixed, maybe he didn't. Maybe it was just the right time combination of events to, secure that catch. But Cedric Tillman is an interesting one. He didn't blaze the 40, but he has game speed. He's 23. He's a big body. And he is capable of muscling other players out of the way. And that's something that I think cannot be undervalued in this draft. I'm not comparing him to Andre Johnson, but physically, that's who he reminds me of. Although I think Andre definitely ran a faster 40. Could be wrong. Which brings me to edge. And you got like redshirt senior Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. He would be a good one. He's a little older than I would like, I guess. But I'm also not opposed to the Kansas State product, Felix Uzama. I can never remember his 3 names. He's one hell of a talent, and we desperately need someone on the edge in the edge room who's one, not over 32, two, actually has some promise to be premier at the position. And at the moment, we have nobody on the roster. We didn't even draft an edge last year. So we need to do it this year. I need to probably do it again next year. And I think there's some good edge talent. Will McDonald, cannot remember. You can see the school. Is it Iowa State? The outside linebacker, Will McDonald, the fourth or something. He would be a good pickup as an edge. I think you could probably get him in the second round, and that would be huge for the team. And I also think that Devin Washington, Withers, something like that, Witherspoon maybe, out of Illinois would be a huge pickup. There's a lot of places to go here, folks, but well, I think we're getting close to the end here, and I want to go ahead and thank you all for watching. Again, hit the like and subscribe button, and as we're trying to muscle our way up to 1,000 subscribers, you are instrumental in that. So please, 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 smash the like button, smash the subscribe button, and hit the notification bells so you don't miss anything. Be good people.